Well, the situation in Idlib in Syria is quite an interesting one at the moment, probably one of the most pressing issues, because there's some suggestion that the Assad regime might go ahead and carry out some kind of military operation there, and it is the last large city left in Syria that actually is in the hands of the opposition there, and it's causing quite a few problems for the countries involved in the Astana process. That's Turkey, Russia and Iran, and particularly for Turkey, because there are two areas that where the problems are for this particular country, because in Idlib there are about 3 million people there. About half of them are already internally displaced. There are people who have been moved from other parts of Syria as part of ceasefire agreements, including Aleppo, an agreement there which Turkey was part of. So these people are already living in quite desperate conditions. Now, if there's going to be a major military offensive by the Assad regime there to try and take that city back, then these people could be on the move again, and the only place that they could go to really is to Turkey itself, or areas controlled by Turkey like Jarablus or Afrin. So there's a lot of problems there to be sorted out for Turkey, and also from a military aspect as well. This is a de-escalation zone which was set up by Turkey, Russia and Iran, and there are some members of the Turkish military there. They have 12 observation posts, and if the Assad regime starts a military operation there, what is Turkey going to do about that? Is it going to get drawn into the conflict itself? How is this going to work out? And also, is it going to still take part in the Astana process? Will it still see that as worthwhile? Well, we just heard there from both Sergey Lavrov from Russia and the Turkish foreign minister that they are still pursuing a peaceful outcome to this this conflict in this particular area. So it's not sure that this operation will take place, but what we heard from Sergey Lavrov there just presents the difficulties of trying to sort this situation out, because he is saying that he's looking for a peaceful solution, but at the same time he's saying that this area, there are members of an organisation that used to be known as Jabhat al-Nusra, now known as Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, basically the former Al-Qaeda branch in this area. And it seems that the Assad regime is in a way gunning for this group. It wants to go in there and remove them. They are terrorists. Sergey Lavrov, they're talking about how these are terrorists. They are not covered by UN resolutions, so the Syrian regime has a right to go in and root those people out. But a warning there from the Turkish foreign minister that if that happens, that could result in a massacre, because the number of innocent people there, if you like, the number of internally displaced people far outweighs the number of members of this organisation that the Syrian regime wants to get rid of. I don't think the Turkish government wants to keep them there either. Right. But depending on how they approach this situation, there could be a whole lot more violence in this area.
Andrew, let me ask you a broader question, if you will. What feeling are you getting about the Russia-Turkey relationship moving forward now, given they're both facing punitive action from the United States, and that they share so many important economic interests while their currencies are both jointly struggling?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite symbolic as well, I think, that at this time when sanctions and economic troubles for Turkey are sort of pushing these two NATO allies, the United States and Turkey, it seems, further apart, that we've had here the Russian foreign minister and the Turkish foreign minister standing side by side talking about their different positions and how they have quite a lot in common at the moment. They have a lot of economic interests together, and we heard them there both sort of joining together, really condemning these sanctions from the United States. They're both suffering from sanctions which have been imposed in the last few days. Russia has had some imposed because of its alleged involvement in the poisoning of a former Russian spy in Britain and his daughter a few months ago, and Turkey in the past few days they had sanctions on their two ministers as well. So both economies suffering to a certain extent because of this. We heard during the press conference there talk about the nuclear plant that both countries are working on, which is going to be built in the south of Turkey. Also the Turkstream project, a gas pipeline which will run from Russia across the Black Sea through Turkey and into Europe. So they have a lot in common. It's quite interesting that while it seems that the US is moving further away, that Russia seems to be willing to step into the breach somewhat. We had at the height of this current crisis for Turkey, Vladimir Putin making a phone call to him a few days ago. And also there during that press conference, the two foreign ministers talking about how they were going to both use local currency for trade in future instead of the US dollar. So it does seem they are moving closer together as the US seems to be pulling further away.